Good afternoon. Welcome to the April 23rd policy session of the Phoenix City Council. I will now call the meeting to order, and we will begin with roll call.
Councilman DeCiccio?
Here.
Councilmember Garcia?
Here.
Councilman Nowakowski? Councilman Nowakowski? Councilwoman Pastor?
Here.
Councilwoman Stark?
Here.
Councilman Waring?
Here.
Councilwoman Williams?
Here.
Vice Mayor Guardado?
Here.
Mayor Gallego?
Here. Thank you. Vice Mayor, do we have a motion to enter into an executive session?
Yes, Mayor. In accordance with a properly posted notice and agenda, I move that the City Council, pursuant to Arizona Revised Statutes, Section 38-431-03A, meet an executive session on Tuesday, April 28, 2020 at 1 p.m. and Thursday, April 30th, 2020 at 1 p.m. in the East Conference Room, 12th floor of Phoenix City Hall, 200 West Washington Street, Phoenix, Arizona. Additionally, I move to change the start times of the Tuesday, April 28th, 2020 and Thursday, April 30th, 2020 policy sessions from 1 p.m. to 2:30 p.m. Second.
Motion and a second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes unanimously. Thank you, Vice Mayor. City Manager, do we have any budget updates or COVID-19 updates today?
Mayor, we do not today. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you. Then we will move to an item that is always important, but that we have seen recently how critical it is to our city, our census update. I will introduce Frank McCune, Government Relations Director, to begin the presentation.
Is Frank on?
Good morning.
There we go.
Good morning, Mayor and Council.
Should we go to Albert?
Yeah, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Hello, everyone. Oh, there we go.
Frank, you were listed first, but happy to introduce Census Director if that is appropriate.
Mayor, we will start with
me?
Frank McCune. Thank you. Frank?
Okay. Good afternoon. Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. Today, we're here to provide you a snapshot of how the census is going and the success and progress to date, where we have some challenges and some focused attention we need to place in some areas. We'll talk about the operations, the schedule, and the efforts during this COVID environment that will discuss our pivot and what we suggest our next course of action will be. The extension, the deadline for the census is extended into the later fall or even summer. So to start our presentation today, Albert Santana, the Census Director, will start with the beginning of our presentation. Thanks, Albert.
Thank you, Frank. Mayor, members of the council, as Frank said, today we are thankful for the opportunity to present you all with an update as to how the census operations are going and some modifications that have been made to that schedule, as well as an update as to what we're working on our campaign during the current environment. And then, of course, a call to action as we are optimistic about the results thus far. We definitely have a strong call to action to keep the message top of mind as much as we can about the census and the importance it has on our city. So with that, we talked about the process overview. So the census is absolutely live. It kicked off on March 12th, and as recent as a few weeks ago, the Census Bureau did announce that they were going to be extending the deadline for individuals to respond, and that has now moved to October 31st. So hopefully on Halloween, a lot of trick-or-treating is happening, as well as a lot of census responses are happening. During this time, the census has also been mailed out 5 notifications. Those notifications began the week of March 9th, and the notifications will continue through April 30th for those that have not yet responded. They also have made some modifications to their door knocking. That's also referred to as enumeration. They moved that out from when they were scheduled to do it, which was around May. They are now going to begin that operation August 11th, and the door knocking will continue throughout the duration of the campaign. I did reference that the Bureau has made some changes, and really what those are in general are that they suspended their field operations to June 1st or thereafter, and really these operations affect 3 areas. One, as I mentioned, was the enumeration and the door knocking operation. They also are suspending operations for their office work, so they have several offices throughout, in this case, the Phoenix area, so those individuals are not physically in their office at the moment until after June. And then also the processing center. This is the facility that's located in West Phoenix where they're actually processing responses that come via the mail. So those operations are large in part suspended until after June 1st and will be updated as we get updates from the Census Bureau. They also are asking for congressional support in regards to 2 specific areas. One is extending the delivery date for the final count to the president. They are now asking for that to happen on April 30th, 2021. And the other area they need congressional support is when they deliver the count information that specifically impacts the redistricting, and they're asking for that date to be moved out to July 31st, 2020. In essence, what they'll be asking council for is an extra 120 days to deliver the count to the president, as well as deliver the count that impacts redistricting. So how to respond? We still want to make sure the community is well aware that the response ways are still there. There's the 3 ways. First is the online, which is you can access through icount2020.info and be able to respond online. You also have the ability to respond via phone. We have 2 examples here, one in English as well as one in Spanish, but there are 13 different phone lines for the 13 languages that are available for individuals to respond via phone. And of course, for those that are more comfortable and would like to respond via mail, the Census Bureau did send out after April 8th paper forms to every household that has yet to respond. So we have all 3 options available for the community to be able to respond to the 2020 census. In regards to our most recent response rates at the national level, the rate is about 51.8. Here in the state of Arizona, we are at 49.4. And within the city of Phoenix, we are just over 50% at 50.5. And the link that you see below is something that staff checks on a daily basis. Around 3 p.m. Eastern on a daily basis, they post daily updates to the responses within your respective states and cities. As we begin to look at kind of how we are doing amongst our peers, for cities with a population of over 1 million people across the country, the city of Phoenix is doing pretty well. As you see, Phoenix, in comparison to our peers with populations, again, over 1 million, is number 3 in the country. So while we're happy with that success, we know that we want to continue moving forward and working hard as we've got lots of work to do. When we drill down a little closer to home and we look at it from a state perspective or a regional perspective, our county campaign, our Maricopa County-wide campaign is doing quite well, at a little under 54%. And again, we talked about Phoenix, but as we look to the second largest city in our state, Tucson, they're a little above 50%, followed by information about Mesa, Chandler, Gilbert, and Glendale. And really, we just want to show you that the regional campaign has had positive response in the first 40 days. Every city is working hard and working together. And here in Phoenix, we want to make sure that we are continuing to be very diligent in our approach all the way throughout the entire campaign. As we look, and what we do have available to us in 2020 is we have very important and helpful information about our city. And so what staff has been doing as well on a daily basis is that we take a look at every one of our council districts, and we're able to identify some very detailed information, such as looking at census tract numbers within each one of your respective districts. We're able to track different response rates for certain tract numbers that we want to focus on in case those percentages, we want to make sure they're a little higher. We then look at the specific boundaries within those census tracts so we know exactly where those areas are. And we can even drill down as far as identifying the exact amount of households that are within each one of these districts. And we really wanted to show this to you all to say, one, that information is quickly available to us to be able to tell us where we need to focus in our resources, but also that this is something that we need to pay attention to citywide. This call of action of being able to continually pushing the census information out is not in one part of town in Phoenix. We have needs throughout the city, and we want to make sure that we're doing our due diligence, watching this information, so we can make sure that our city ultimately has a complete count. The current environment is no stranger to you all. I know that you all have been watching this daily. We are in an environment that's practicing social distancing. We've had, specifically for our campaign, a postponement of a lot of our grassroots efforts, specifically lots of events that we had scheduled. A lot of individuals are working remotely, and the traffic volumes are really down. So these types of things are the environment that we're all in, and as a part of your census team, we are constantly trying to find creative ways to make sure that the awareness message and the important message about the census is still out there, so that way our community knows that it's absolutely vital for them to respond. So in light of that, what we've done is done some pivoting to our plan to try to find the most creative ways to do just that while practicing social distancing. So from a media plan perspective, we have found some good information. One is that we know that since people are working remotely or sheltering in place, the consumption of media in home or on phone is up substantially. Nielsen recently gave a report that the in-home media consumption is up about 60%. So in light of that, we're really trying to maximize our media plan that takes advantage of any kind of messaging that's on TV, that's on a digital format, or that's in a social format, or anything that's on streaming. So we're really trying to make sure that we are utilizing those tactics to the best of our ability. We also are doing something that's pretty creative and available to us now and via the technology that exists, which is geofencing. And geofencing is the ability for us to have direct messages to individuals, whether it's based out of a zip code, a census tract. So we're really drilling down. And also one thing we did was we know people are still going to grocery stores to get their essentials. So in Phoenix specifically, we've identified 32 grocery stores within census tracts that have some of the lower response rates. So we can capture individuals' presence while at these facilities and be able to send them encouraging messages about participating in the census. So this was a really creative tactic that the marketing team was able to put together to be able to send messages during this time. As far as performance goes, to date, the regional campaign has spent about 50% of its media budget, and we have a coverage of about 90% of the region, and that ties in Phoenix as well. And to date, it's got a frequency of about 15 times, meaning that the messages would have been able to reach individuals in 15 different ways or 15 different times. We also have had to do some modifications and pivoting for our community engagement perspective. We are continuing to work with all of our interdepartmental efforts, and I would like to highlight one specific example that we're doing with the Human Services Department, for example. They've got a program that includes about 6,000 seniors, and as a part of the Human Services staff doing their daily wellness checkups, as well as the individuals that are participating in Meals for Seniors, when they're out there providing those programs, we are providing them with census materials. So whether they're receiving a meal or whether they're doing their wellness check, they're getting a reminder from city staff about the importance to participate in the census, as it's critical for these programs to be able to have. We're also continuing our relationships with all of our community-based organizations and schools. And for example, with schools, although students are now at home, there are still many school districts throughout the city of Phoenix that are providing meals and information directly to families. So we are providing those districts with information about the census so that way they can pass those on to the students and to the families. We also have continued to do work with our Phoenix Census grants. We had 24 applications that have come in, so the committee is reviewing those through the fundraising efforts of our census committee, as well as the support from the Phoenix IDA. We have a little over $77,000 of funding that we're going to be able to pass directly through to these community-based organizations that are doing great work in helping to create awareness for the census. The last piece that was a part of our grassroots plan is our canvassing, and while the canvassing operation is on hold until it's safe for us to be able to go and do canvassing, we are doing things now like getting all of our canvassers trained in a virtual format, making sure we have all of the materials, so that way once the restrictions are lifted and it is safe for us to begin canvassing, that is an operation that we will be able to initiate immediately. So I mentioned earlier about a call to action, and although, while Phoenix is the 5th largest city in the country, and our census campaign was launched during the middle of a national pandemic, and the environment that we in, and we're optimistic about our response. We definitely have a lot of work to do, and we want to make sure that we're working with you all and any other partners that we can to help support each other and getting the messages out, and whether we're doing things like communicating messages in newsletters, or if there's any availability that whether you, Mayor, or members of council have any talk shows, we definitely want to take advantage of any opportunities to support you and provide information about the census, talk about the importance. We know that many of you are hosting neighborhood meetings and town halls in a virtual format. If there's any opportunity for us to be a part of that, we recently found out this week that the Census Bureau did bring on staff to be able to support these types of meetings, and we can help educate the community about the importance, but also we can also help them about how to exactly fill out their census. So any opportunities like that, we definitely want to be there to support you and to be able to send those messages out to the community. And then last but definitely not least, social media. Social media is something that's a very effective tool right now. I talked about, we know that people are spending a lot more time on their computers and phones, and so if we're able to capture them in those moments and send message about participating, we want to do so. And I can kind of wrap up by saying that staff has been working over the last couple months to put together customized census toolkits for your offices. We know that you all are extremely busy, and so we wanted to provide you with census materials that could be shared in a digital format. It can be shared in your social media or any kind of email, so we can provide you with this stuff, and it will be absolutely turnkey ready. So just to share with you a couple of examples, this one here speaks to how it's very easy, quick, 10 minutes, 9 questions. Everything that we're going to be providing your office will be bilingual, so here's that same graphic but done in Spanish. We've had lots of questions about making sure that the census is confidential, so we have graphics ready for you to share that speak to confidentiality. We've talked on many occasions about one of the most undercounted groups in our community is children under 5. So here's a graphic that's done in Spanish that speaks to the importance of counting children and the excitement of counting children as a part of their first census. And then we've mentioned earlier about while people are working from home and practicing the social distancing, that now is a time where you can quickly complete your census, and we are sharing with them the 3 options there. And then the last one here, the city staff did work to create a short video that we will be able to share with you as well that really educates people about the importance of practicing the social distancing, working from home, and while you're doing that, why not take 10 minutes to be able to do the census. And Mayor, members of council, this concludes our presentation, and I would like to take a moment as a city employee for over 20 years and a native to this great city. I would like to thank you all for your leadership during an unprecedented and honestly never seen time in our city's history. Thank you to our executive team and to our first responders and medical professionals. Also, I would like to give a special thanks to our city manager, Ed. You've done an outstanding job leading us through this pandemic and true economic shock. And as a part of your census team, we just want you to know that we're here to do whatever we can to make sure that the future is bright for Phoenix, and making sure that we're doing all we can to get a complete count for our city. And with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Wonderful. Thank you, Albert. Thank you, Frank. We appreciate you making sure we do a good job with this vital count in really unprecedented times. I think the City Council appreciated how important census was before COVID-19, but recent events have driven it home. We are able to do so much more and better support our city in partnership with federal funds, and we want to make sure we get our fair share. Spoke to one mayor who missed a significant allocation by a very short population margin. There was funding for cities of over 500,000, and it just makes such a difference to have an accurate count, especially important in what may still be America's fastest growing city. We want to make sure we count accurately, and glad that we are among large cities in the top 3, but we want to do our part and lead in Maricopa County as well. So thank you for some great suggestions. I would certainly, we'll find a good way to get you. Hopefully Channel 11 viewership is also up in recent times, and maybe we can get you on the mayor's show, and I think council members will have some creative ideas as well about how to promote the census and reach out. We will open it up for council member comments or questions, and I would certainly welcome, I know several council members have had some very creative ways to reach out to their constituents about the census, so I would encourage you to share those success stories.
Mayor,
Councilwoman Stark.
this coming Saturday, we're having a little parade in Sunny Slope, and Albert's mobile unit will be the star of the parade. So we're excited about that. We, of course, will all be in separate cars, respecting social distancing, but hopefully we can get the word out in Sunny Slope. Thank you.
Very cool. We'll look to District 3 social media and the Census social media to make sure we see our two famous parade vehicles. Someone wrote into us, to my office, and said that the National Association of Latino Elected Officials had done research and that about half of Latino residents still believe there's a citizenship question on the census. So I would also welcome any ideas council members have about how to educate our community that that question is not part of the census. Well, thank you, Frank and Albert.
Mayor, sorry.
Garcia.
Yeah, I was speaking on mute. I think it's important that we tie a lot of the work that we're doing on COVID. I think there's a lot of opportunities to support communities that are going through a lot right now, both because of COVID and just the whole economic situation. And so I think with a lot of our community support efforts and the things we're going to be doing with the CARES funding, we should also include the importance of the census. I think we've been trying to do some live videos, been trying to do as much as we can on social media, but I maybe, Albert, and I don't know where we're at with this, we should have another brainstorming session or figure out if we could do a WebEx ad hoc committee meeting to get some of these ideas going and figure out how to use social media and a lot of the stuff that is available to us during the crisis.
Mayor, Councilman Garcia, that's a great idea, and we definitely want to make sure people understand that the experience that we're all feeling now, that the census does have a direct impact to that, and we will work on getting us a WebEx to pull our ad hoc committee together and keep those ideas flowing so we can implement everything as much as possible.
I think that's a great suggestion, Council Member.
Mayor, it's Vice Mayor.
Vice Mayor, please.
I think the other thing, I mean, I would like to know how many phone calls we're actually doing. I mean, I'm just looking at the numbers, because one of the things that we talked about a few months ago was the fact that folks were not going to open the door for folks if they came knocking on the door, just because the citizenship question is still like a big issue for folks. And I've seen a couple of the commercials on TV, but I think maybe people are home more now, and I think it would be good, like if in Univision or Telemundo we did more around the census, because I think there's some stuff that's happening around the census on TV, but not as much. And I think that could be very helpful in terms of people like understanding that they are not going to go after them with the citizenship question. And I think another good idea is probably doing like a telethon that's like what's been done in the past. I think that could also be very helpful.
Mayor, Vice Mayor Guardado, that's a great idea, and we'll have those conversations with Univision, Telemundo, and our other media partners. And I know that they did have some town halls that were scheduled that they are rescheduling now, but we will circle back with them to see how we can quickly do those types of things, because you're absolutely right that we need to continue pushing that message that the census is safe and that it's confidential, and then also make sure people know that the citizenship question is not a part of this. So definitely agree with your comments, and we will work on getting those messages more and more with Univision and Telemundo and partners like that.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. I have received a fair amount of text messages from other different vendors lately, and perhaps that is a good idea. we can, of course, comply with all of the protections around text messages, but that is a good way to reach us when so many people are spending more time connected through digital tools. Also, thank you, Albert. You mentioned the great work that Human Services is doing and the partnership with the schools. Our schools are such vital links with the community right now, and this is also something that's important to them. Vital programs like summer meal service, which has now become April meal service through schools, funded through the census. So we should remind people how vital those programs are and how valuable it is to participate in the census. Any additional questions or comments from council members? Now type your credentials.
Mayor,
Thank
this
you,
is Councilman Nowakowski. I'm sorry.
Please, Councilman Nowakowski.
Sorry about that. Mayor, I think it's really important that we help out our seniors. But one of the things that we're hearing out there is that they actually need somebody to physically go to their homes, or I'm not sure if there's a way for us to actually walk them through the process. Some of these seniors are afraid of new technology, so they're used to having somebody walk them through the process. So I was just wondering if there's a way to contact some of these seniors, and if there's a way to actually help them through it, if it's either through a phone call and being on the phone with them, walking them through the process. And also, we have a lot of public housing, and how do we use our public housing resources in the city of Phoenix to really reach out and help people fill out those forms? Same situation, we have a lot of parents that their kids are computer savvy. And people in our city housing that we can use to help them out too, right? Tools.
That's a great, multiple great suggestions, Councilman, and we have done some investments in having better connections with internet, and I think maybe doing more for our city housing residents. So with those labs and others, that does seem like a great idea for additional census work. And
Mayor,
our human services folks are doing such great work reaching out to our older adults who are at home, and I think would be trusted partners as well. Yes, go ahead, Councilman.
Mayor, this is City Manager Ed. You actually just said the thing is, we have our city employees who do casework with our Head Start, with our seniors and our families, and with the suggestions from Councilman Nowakowski, as you just mentioned, we will make sure that our caseworkers, they are all reaching out at least on a weekly basis to their case, to their clients, and so we will make sure that there is a census message regularly with each of them for the seniors, for the families, and for the children as they're reaching out. So thank you for that suggestion.
Wonderful. I also think we will get many great suggestions when we convene our census committee. I am grateful to then Mayor Williams for creating the committee and serving as a chair along with Councilwoman Stark and Councilmember Garcia. We appreciate your continued leadership in this incredibly vital effort. So thank you for being willing to serve. Do we have any closing comments? And thank you, Albert, and good luck.
Thank you very much.
Excellent. We will next move to an update on public transportation operations and welcome our Deputy City Manager to introduce the item. Thank you, Mario, for your hard work on these issues.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the council. With me today to provide an update on public transit's next steps in the COVID pandemic response is Jesus Sapien, Public Transit Director. You'll recall that Jesus and I were here just a couple of weeks ago to provide an update on several actions that public transit has taken to protect the health and safety of our passengers and drivers while still continuing to provide important transit service for people who rely on transit and are still needing to use transit for their essential jobs, and while helping to prevent further spread of the virus. So today we're back to discuss some proposed next steps to continue to help us along those lines, also in light of substantial drops in ridership and availability of drivers and budgetary considerations. So these are some of the things that we're all trying to balance as we move forward. So I will turn this presentation over to Jesus to give a quick recap of the actions that we've taken so far and to describe our proposed next steps. Jesus?
Thank you, Mario. Mayor, members of the council, thank you for having us today back at the table to update you on public transit operations. I will tell you that we have been working very closely with our contractors, the public, the different workforces that are out there providing the services. And I want to commend city staff and everyone that works for our contractors, the bus operators union. Everyone's been coming together and doing a really, really good job and making sure that the provision of transit continues. So just an update. Bear with me. There we go. So just a reminder, the first few slides are going to be some reminders of some actions that we took early on. So as you may recall, we took on enhanced cleaning and disinfecting on everything in the transit environment, primarily the vehicles, but also bus stops, light rail stations, high-touch areas, et cetera, and all of that continues. Other things that we've done, you may recall we had some council-approved social distancing measures. Most recently, the bus passenger limits that we rolled out a few weeks ago, we are keeping a very, very close eye on that. Rear door boarding and alighting, this is something that we've seen rolled out at a good number of transit agencies across the U.S., and it is working well relative to bus operations and social distancing. You may recall we talked to you about installing plexiglass behind the driver's area. That is completed throughout the regional fleet. We're keeping a close eye on that as well. We worked very closely with internal and external staff to kind of design something on the fly and install them over a very short period of time, but they are in place and working well. The other thing, in similar fashion, the area on light rail vehicles next to the operator cab has also been cordoned off. We continue working with our contractors on the distribution of PPE to their employees. We are tracking every one of those costs to make sure that we are going to reimburse our contractors for that. We're also working closely with our finance department to kind of, I'll call it, fill in the gaps on any items that our contractors might not be able to obtain. So we're all kind of pitching in on that effort. And then we continue to maintain the hand sanitizer dispensers on our vehicles. In terms of passenger messaging, just a reminder that we continue to push out the information via various methods, websites, social media. We are doing a lot of onboard messaging, signage throughout the entire system, and that is at light rail platforms, bus stops, transit centers, park and rides, but most importantly on the vehicles, inside the vehicles themselves. And then just a reminder, the preliminary data that we've been seeing for the month of March, local bus is down approximately 45%, rapid and express 65%, light rail approximately 50%, and Phoenix Dial-A-Ride 50%. So as Mario said at the beginning of this presentation, we have seen some significant ridership impacts because of COVID-19. So service reductions to date, on April 6th, you may recall, we reduced Rapid and Express. Those are commuter routes that come from different park and rides throughout the region to downtown Phoenix. We reduced those approximately 50%. We felt confident in doing that because we were seeing the small numbers on those trips. So we knew that we can implement the service reduction and at the same time maintain the social distancing requirements. And then on April 11th, Valley Metro modified the light rail hours Normally, they start a little after 4 o'clock Monday through Saturday. They usually go till 2 a.m. on Friday and Saturday, but we're basically seeing Monday through Saturday, 4:40 in the morning till 11 p.m. Sunday remains unchanged. And then the biggest thing is the 15-minute frequency at peaks is now in place instead of the 12-minute frequency. So as Mario said, we're here to talk about additional changes that we feel can be implemented. One major thing is to mirror the availability of the workforce. We do see the availability of the workforce being impacted for various reasons, but I'll talk a little bit about what that means. We also want to ensure the bus trips, the local bus trips primarily that we want to operate throughout the area, are focused on the area where we are seeing the most ridership. As Mario said, we also want to begin the discussion of tackling the budget challenges that are coming up facing us all. And then I will also mention and show a picture of, we have begun the process of researching implementing long-term safety solutions on our buses. So one of the things that we want to talk about is ending service after 11 p.m. So Monday through Thursday, we generally go midnight or later. Friday and Saturday, we generally go until 2 a.m. And so what we're looking at is ending service around 11. What I want to make clear on this point, however, is that all service wouldn't immediately end at 11 p.m. And what I mean by that is similar to like we see the bus schedule today. When we have a trip, for example, we say today we end service at midnight, Monday through Thursday. That doesn't mean that all service immediately ends at midnight. What that means is that the last trips of the day begin at that time. So we would implement something similar here. So it doesn't mean immediately at 11 p.m. everything just stops. What that means is that the last trips of the day will start a little before or after that. So there will be some service on the street after 11 p.m. The other thing that we want to talk about is beginning the service day earlier. Currently on the weekdays, we see the start at 4 a.m. We would change that to 5 a.m. And then the other thing is on weekends, we currently start at 5, we would change that to 6. We're seeing the least amount of ridership during these times. As you may recall, bars, restaurants are closed, so we're not seeing a lot of ridership there. So these are the areas that we feel we can make those changes with the least amount to riders. Again, it impacts the hours with the least amount of ridership. We've all been we've also been talking to the bus operators union and our service providers to see where we could basically implement changes in the schedules that would match where we're seeing the ridership. The way it is basically is the longer you operate, the more bus drivers and buses that you need. What we're proposing here is just condensing the overall service day so that we can match the available workforce to those core hours. It would give our contractors flexibility with their personnel and resources. And right now we're estimating approximately saving $300,000 per week with these changes. The other thing I'll talk about is that we have begun the process we've done over the past several months researching adding permanent shields to buses. This will be somewhat of an undertaking for us because we have 500 vehicles in our fleet. So we're looking at the different makes and models that are available out there. We feel a permanent shield would provide that extra layer of protection for drivers for various reasons, but as we've seen recently, more than anything would serve as a health measure. So the other thing we'll be looking at in the coming weeks is issuing a solicitation to obtain the equipment and installation services to install these permanently on our entire fleet. And with that, I'll turn it over to Mario.
Thank you, Jesus. So Mayor, members of the council, we are asking for your approval today to move forward with suspending the bus service after 11 p.m. and shifting the start time to an hour later. We would propose beginning this, making it effective Monday, May 4th, which allows time for us to reach out to our passengers, notify the public of those service changes so that adjustments can be made. And then secondly, as Jesus described, working with our operators and contractors and looking at issuing a procurement for permanent driver safety shields. As we talked about, we've got the temporary shields up. We want to make that a longer-term solution. We also want to make sure that we can take advantage of the CARES funding, the federal CARES funding that's available, and look to use that to help us with the driver safety shields that are going to help protect their health. So with that, we're available to answer any questions you have.
Mayor?
Thank you, Mario and Jesus. Councilwoman.
Thank you. This is Councilwoman Williams. I have
Wonderful.
a couple of questions. One on the routes where you want to suspend the service. Have you went through each route and identified if there are any that do have high usage after that time, or are they just the average or across the board?
Mayor, members of the council, what I would say is it is across the board. We are tracking ridership trying to track ridership via other methods. The thing that does make it kind of difficult right now is when we move to rear door boardings. You may recall that our fare collection system basically geocodes every boarding, so it talks to the GPS system on the buses to let us know where people are boarding and alighting. Unfortunately, right now, we don't have that capability because we're rear door boarding, but we are nonetheless keeping a close eye on the system as a whole. And what I would say is the decrease in ridership, Councilwoman, as you said, is across the board.
Okay. And then my second question is on the equipment and installation of the new safety equipment. You and I have had several discussions along with Mario on making sure that when you put this out, that you recognize all the different types of buses and find out what's available that will fit in the different types of buses, because I have a feeling you're going to have several options, probably several costs, and I want to make sure that you are dealing with the newer buses first, because hopefully we will be able to replace some of the very older buses. So I would just like to have you make sure you're doing that.
We will make sure we do that. Thank you, Councilwoman.
Mayor, I would make the motion to approve staff's recommendations.
Thank you, Councilwoman Williams.
I'll second it.
Thank you, Councilwoman Stark. Any additional questions or comments? Roll call.
Mayor, sorry.
Councilmember Garcia.
Yeah, I had a quick question about, I know we wouldn't start it till May 4th, but what would be the plan? Are we reviewing this weekly, or would it just be indefinitely? What would be the plan to go back? That's one question. Like, what would trigger, and obviously ridership, but what would that look like to go back to these extended hours? And then two, I know our contract is kind of, we pay for the service that's there. Is that being impacted at all with our contract with the provider? The fact that we're reducing hours.
So, Councilman, members of the council, thank you. I'll tackle the second question first. Yes, you are correct, Councilman. Our contracts are based on, we pay for every mile that the contractors operate. Basically, what we would do is give our contractors the opportunity to, I'll call it, right-size their workforces according to what they're seeing show up for work to match the shorter service day. They are experiencing a higher number of call-outs during this time, and so we basically want to condense the service day to match the workforce that is there. For your first question, I would say, honestly, I think just time's going to tell. I know you've heard Milton come to a couple of meetings and talk about some reopening guidelines. So we're keeping a close eye on how we would go about that. Of course, there would be several factors and triggers where we would put things back, I'll call it. That might be CDC guidance, state guidance, ridership increases, and workforce availability. So I would say it would be a mixture of all of those things. I, like you, am eager to put things back to normal, but we also recognize that right now we're working within the confines of these different factors that are impacting us. But my staff and I have early morning operations discussions every single day, and we're trying our best to respond to all of that. So I would tell you that as things improve and reopen, I think is when we would begin the discussion of restoring these hours.
Thank you, Jesus. Any additional comments or questions? Roll call.
Councilman DeCiccio?
Yes.
Councilmember Garcia?
Yes.
Councilman Nowakowski?
Yes.
Councilwoman Pastor?
Yes.
Councilwoman Stark?
Yes.
Councilman Waring?
Yes.
Councilwoman Williams?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Guardado?
Yes.
Mayor Gallego?
Yes.
And Mayor, that motion passes unanimously.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you to our transportation team for their work on this difficult but important issue. That is our final agenda item for today's council meeting. We will reconvene again next week. We are adjourned.